A very warm welcome to the 8th recitation, which is about JavaScript functions. Before we start with the recitation, I just want to give a gentle reminder to please fill the quiz forms that are given in the PowerPoint presentation to be marked for attendance. You can find all the information regarding these recitations, like the PowerPoint presentations and any additional files on Canvas. If you go under the Files tab, under Recitation Information folder, if you click on my name, Jayashree Domala, you can find all the recitation folders and the files for each of them. Also, when you're submitting assignments, please be sure to mention the honor code to be marked for attendance. So the purpose of this recitation is to practice the creation and modification of JavaScript functions. And the recitation is related to the content on chapter 19 of the Fluency textbook. So if you want to learn more about this, make sure that you go through the chapter as well. Now, when we talk about JavaScript functions, we are going to code 3 problem statements and understand how the functions work. So the first one, let's see what it is. It is the cube power function. So our first problem statement is to write a program to calculate the cube of a number. Okay, and what we will be doing is we will first be creating a basic HTML file, and then we will put our JavaScript function in that HTML file. So the basic template of the HTML file can be found on Canvas under the Files tab, under Recitation Information, under my name, and in the Recitation 8 folder. But while we go through this recitation, we will not be using the template. We will first write the basic template so you understand it better, and then add our JavaScript functions as needed for each of the problem statements. So before we start coding, let's just try to understand how we will go about it. If you want to find a cube of a number, the first thing is we need a formula to find it. So if we have a number given x, the cube is going to be x to the power 3. So if we have to write it in JavaScript, we will have to write y equal to x into x into x, that is x multiplied 3 times with itself. We have to do this because JavaScript does not actually have a mathematical symbol for exponential numbers. So now we have a formula. What we have to do is we will have to place this formula in the JavaScript function using a function declaration and definition, which follows the format as given in the image on the left hand side. So let's see how the syntax of a JavaScript function is. You write function, the keyword function, followed by the name as in the name of the JavaScript function, and in brackets you pass the parameters. The parameters are basically the input, like, oh, in this case you are given a number x and you have to find the cube of x. So here the parameter will be x. Then you will write the curly brackets, and the statements that are needed to be performed inside the function are written inside these curly brackets. So most of the time you can just write the formula and then return the output. So if you see, let's see how the cube function will be written now. So you write the keyword function, then you give a name of the function. So here we have given the name cube, and now we have to pass our parameters. So assuming our input parameter would be num, we write num in the round brackets. Then we have the curly brackets inside which we will write our statements. So what do we have to return? We have to return the cube of the num. So we will write return, the keyword return, and then we'll write num into num into num, which will give us the cube of the function. So let's do one thing. Let's get started and write this code down. Please, I would request everyone to code along with me, because this way you will understand better, and it'll be fun also during the entire recitation because it is entirely coding based. So let's get to our editors. We have our editor here, and I have created an HTML file which just says shell.html. Feel free to name it whatever you want. So first we will create a basic template of our HTML file, and then we will write our JavaScript function. So let's get started. The first thing will be, we will define the doc type HTML. Then we will create the HTML tag. Inside the HTML tag, we have the head tag. And inside the head tag, let's just give the meta character set as UTF-8. Okay. Then we will give a title. So let's give it a title, cube function. You can give it whatever title suits like you will like to. Then after title, let's do one thing. Let's make it a bit interesting and do some styling and give some background color so that our HTML page does not look very boring. So let's have a style tag. Inside the style tag, let's give the body some background color, and I would give it aqua. Choose the color that suits you. Then let's move on. Let's give a font family also. So we have the font family. I would like to give it the font family sans serif. Then we can give the text alignment also. So let's do the text alignment to center. Okay, perfect. So we have defined how the body should look like. Let's define how the paragraph tag should look like. Let's give it a font size of say 20 pixels. Then what if we have buttons later? So let's just give formatting for our buttons. We'll give it a font size of 20 pixels. Then we can have a background color also. For the background color, let's give it, okay, let's give it coral. So now the buttons are also styled. If we have any input tags, let's just give it some font size as 20 pixels. Okay, so we have done our styling, and that is our head tag. Now we have the body tag. So this will become our basic HTML template. After this, what we have to do is write the cube function. So the JavaScript functions are written inside the script tag, and the script tag can be seen over here. So we will write script. Okay. Then inside the script, we will have the function. So we will write the function now. So when we, as we have seen already, that the function is written with the parameter function. So we will write function, we'll write cube function, the keyword function, then we will write the function name, which is cube, and then we will pass a parameter num in it. And inside this function, we will write our statement, return num into num into num. And don't forget to put the semicolon. So now let's just save it. Let's save it and go and see our HTML file. So you can see the background color is shown over here, and everything looks fine, except that we have written the function, but we can't see any output to it. So the reason for this is that there were a few errors in the code that we have written. First is that we have written the function, but we never called a function. So whenever you write a function, you need to call a function to act so that it actually executes the statement. So what we did was we only declared the function. That is what it's called. When you create a function and you write it, it's called declaration of the function. That is all we have done. We need to call the function so as to get the output. Also, in the function, we said that the parameter is num, but nowhere in our entire program, we have actually told what the number is to perform the calculation. I mean, if I need the cube of the number 3, I need to specify that the number is 3, and then only the problem is going to get solved. So if you see, we can fix these errors. There are two, to fix the errors, we will write two statements. First is we will declare the variable, the number for which the cube has to be found. And the next thing is we will call the function. So let's see how to do that. What we will do is, first we will create a variable by using the keyword var, and then write my number and just give it a number, the number that you want to find the cube of. So I'm just writing 7 here. So this way we have solved the problem of where we did not define the number earlier. Now we have defined which number we want to get the cube of. Now the next thing is we have to call the function and display the result. So if you remember, whenever we want to display the result, you write document.write. So we will write that. We'll write document.write, and then we can give a statement, the cube of my number. Oops, the spelling is wrong. My number is plus, and now here we will call the function. Function name is cuber, and then we have to give a parameter to it. So now if you can see, we have just defined the parameter, the variable over here, my number. This is what we will give as our parameter. And don't forget the semicolon. So let's understand what happened over here. We are calling the function cuber my number over here. So what happens is, this my number variable will go into this and it will return its cube, that is my number into my number into my number, which is 7 into 7 into 7. And then that return value will come here and it will be printed by document.write. So let's save this and see if we get an answer. So you can see the cube of 7 is 344. We have the output now on the screen. So just to reiterate, the first code that we wrote, where we said that the variable my number is 7, it takes care of the missing data, that is the missing number. And the second line that we wrote right now, that is for document.write, make sure that the function is also called and the output is also given in the shown on the client side. Now there is one thing to note, that the parameter that we gave, num of the function, and the data argument which is given to the function my number. So we had, when we were writing the function, we gave the parameter as num, but when we called our function, we gave the parameter as my number. You have to understand that they do not have to have the same name, but they need to have the same type. What I mean by type is the data type. That is, if we have over here, if num is a numeric, then we have to make sure this my number is also a numeric. So the data type has to be the same, but the name can be different. The name does not have to match. So this is a very basic program of how we can use JavaScript functions. Now let's go on to the next function and see what it is. So the next function is to calculate the amount of money accumulated based on a deposit, interest rate, number of periods per year the interest was being paid. Okay, so now let's move on to the next function, which is to calculate the amount of money accumulated based on a deposit, interest rate, number of periods per year the interest was paid, and the number of years the money was in the bank. So basically this is just finding the compound interest, and the formula for compound interest is shown on the right. It is C into 1 plus r bar n, the whole raised to n into t. Let's just break down and understand what all these variables mean. So C is the amount deposited, T is the number of years deposited, R is the annual interest rate, and N is the number of interest payments per year. So over here you can see you have the mathematical calculations of multiplication, addition, division, and also of power. So we can do one thing here. Let's try to get the power using a built-in function called mat.pow. This mat.pow can be used for exponentiation. So when I write mat.pow in the bracket 5 comma 2, it means 5 raised to the power 2. So let's go back to our code and let's create a new file. Just create a new file and we can start writing the code for this. Again, we will make a basic HTML template and then we will add our JavaScript function. So we'll write doc type HTML, then open the HTML tag. Inside that we will have our head tag. Inside the head tag, let's just define the meta character set to be UTF-8. Then we will mention the title. We can just write compound interest. Then let's have our body tag. Now inside the body tag, we will have our script tag. Now this is where we will write our JavaScript function for compound interest. So again, we will use the keyword function. Then we need a function name. So we can write int rate. Let's just give it the name. Then the next thing that we are going to do is pass the parameters. So as we had seen in the formula, there were 4 variables that we were using. The first was C, then the next was T, R, and N. So those will be the parameters that we will pass. Now we have to write the formula. What I would say is pause the video over here. The formula is already given on the PPT. So try to write the formula and then come back and check the video to see if you've written the same thing. This way you will get a practice of writing the function statements that are there. So we can write total deposit. I'm creating a variable and in that I will write the calculation. So I will do math dot round because I want to round the values because otherwise the output will be very wrong. So I'm just going to round it up, which is math.round. Then I have to just write the formula down, which is C into math.power of 1 plus R by N. Okay, and then this power has to be raised to N into T. So I just have to write math.power. Oops, I wrote equal to here, so it should be 1 plus R by N, comma, I have to raise it to N into T, so that's why I have written that. And don't forget the semicolon. Oops, it's in the wrong place. Yes. So this is how we will write our formula to calculate the compound interest. Now the function has to return something. So we will return the total deposit variable and put a semicolon. So with this, we have created our function. Now, the next thing that we will have to do is that, I'm so sorry. We have these parameters, but we need to pass the give these parameters some value. So if you remember in the last coding that we did, we described a variable my number is equal to something. This time let's do something different. Let's make it more interactive and let's ask the input from the user. So if you remember, whenever you want to ask input from the user, you use the prompt function. So let's do that and let's ask the input for all the 4 variables that we need. So the first is variable, let's name it original amount. and I will write prompt, enter the initial deposit. Okay, then we have the next one, which is the number of years. So we'll write variable number of years equal to prompt enter the number of years to be deposited. Then we can do the next way for the next variable, which is annual interest rate. We can write prompt enter the annual interest rate. And then the last variable, which is the num pay year, and we can write prompt enter the number of interest payments per year. So now we have created our function, and also we have made sure we get the inputs from the user. Now the last part which is left is we need to call the function and we need to display the output. So for that, we are going to use document.write, and we can say the total amount deposited is, and then we can call the function which is int rate, and we can pass the parameters into it. So the parameters are original amount, comma num years, comma annual interest rate, comma num pay year, and a semicolon. Now let's save the program and let's see if the program works, if there are any errors, so we can come back and resolve it. So okay, so the prompt is asking for the initial deposit. I will write some random values, and then we can, let's see if we get an output. So we can see we got an output. The total amount deposited is 65,684. So with this, we have finished the coding of this one. Let's go through it once again. We created a basic HTML template. Then under the script tag, the first thing we did was write the function, that is declare the function. Declaring of the function, we just wrote the keyword function, then we gave a function name and passed the parameters. Then inside the function, we wrote our statement, which is to calculate the compound interest. The formula we used which was given on the PPT slide as well. Then the next thing we had to do was get the user inputs for all the variables that we were using. So we used the prompt function for that. And lastly, we had to call the function and display the output, for which we use document.write. Now, if you can see that here, like we did code it out and it ran successfully, but let's make it a bit more interesting. Let's use event-driven programming to make the web page more appealing and fun. And let's see how we can do that. So we will go back to writing the code in a new file. What we'll do is we will do the styling. We will write the functions as needed before, but this time we will create a have a form type of layout where there will be text boxes and we will take the input from there. Okay, so let's go back to the code and let's get started. What I'll say is by now you have practiced how to write the template of a basic HTML file. Go ahead, just write the basic template and then come back to the video and go along with that again. So let's do that. We'll write doc type HTML. We'll create the HTML tag. We will have the head tag. Inside that, we will define the meta character set to be UTF-8, then give it a title, which is compound interest. If you want to give it some styling, you can go ahead and do that. I'll just give it some styling. It'll be a good practice to do that. So let's give the body a background color. And mention the font family maybe. Then we can also mention the text alignment to be center. Then the P tag, let's give it a font size of 20 pixels. We will be using a button, so let's give it a font size of 20 pixels and a background color of coral maybe. And lastly, we'll have the text boxes because we're using a form this time. We'll have the font size as 20 pixels, and let's give it a text alignment also of center. So we did some basic styling as well. Now is the body tag. Okay, so inside the body tag, let's create the script tag. All right. So again, like before, we have 4 variables. So first we will declare those variables. Let's just write it again. We'll write variable original amount. And the next variable was the number of years. Then the next variable was annual interest rate. And the last variable was the number year. Now the variables are declared. Next thing is we have to declare the function. So it's the same as before. Pause the video here, go write it down on your text editor, come back to check if the statement that you've written is right or wrong. It'll be a good practice for you to understand how to write all these mathematical functions. So we will write function, give it a function name that is total with interest. We are going to pass the parameters C, T, R, and N. And then inside of that, we will write the total deposited is equal to C into math dot power 1 plus R by N, comma, I want to raise it to N raised to T, and a semicolon. And then I will return the total deposit. If you want, you can also round the values. You just have to use mat.round for it. Feel free to do that also. So with this, we have created our function. Now, the next thing that we have to do is obviously put the text boxes. So let's get out of the script tag. And now we need our text boxes where we will be mentioning our values. So let's create a P tag and say enter the initial deposit. Okay. And after this, we will write our input tag, which is in the form of text, and we will give it an ID. So ID is something that is very unique to that particular input text. So we will give it an ID DEP. All right. And then the next thing is on change. So what happens is when we have a text box and we input a value, there is a change, right? So we have a function on change where we can write what should happen when an input is put in a text box. So whenever the input is put in a text box, okay, what we have to do is that input should go to these variables. So like the first input that we're going to put is initial deposit. So whatever input is there, we will say that it should go to the variable original amount. So let's see how to type it. We'll write on change, and then we can say that the original amount should get the value of it. So we will write dep dot value, but we want to make sure that it is a number. So we will write number dep dot value and a semicolon. So what is happening? We have given an ID dep. Okay. So basically the text box has an ID dep, that is dep. When the user will put an input in that, there will be a change. When that change happens, the ID's value will be given to the variable original amount. So this is how the on change will be used. Now let's get to the other one, and yes, we have to make sure we close the tag. So we close the tag. Now we will take the next input, which is enter the number of years your money will be deposited. Okay. Again, we will write our input tag. So we'll write input. The type is going to be text. I'm sorry, but here we forgot to write the type. So let's just write the type equal to text. Yeah, now that's perfect. So we will write input type is equal to text, and we will give it an ID which is unique to it. So let's give it an ID years. Then again, we will write what should happen on change. In this, we will give the num years the value of years, that is the ID. Got it? And make sure that it is closed. You don't need the slash here, it should work without it. So we have taken the two, and we have written the two text boxes. Now the third one, where we write enter the annual interest rate. Let's take the input. Again, it's a text type. Give it an ID which is unique to it. So we will give it rate, and then write what should happen on change. So on change, the annual int rate will take number and rate dot value. Don't forget to put the semicolon. So here I had forgotten, and here also we'll put the semicolon. And the last one, which is enter the number of interest payments per year. And we have the input type again, which is going to be text. We will give it a unique ID. The ID can be num int pay and the on change. So on change, we'll write the num per year should be equal to number num int pay dot value and a semicolon. So basically now we have taken all the inputs that are needed. Now the next thing to do would be to create a button. Now, because once we have taken all the inputs in the text boxes, we need a button which when clicked will display the output. So let's write the function for our button. Let's just have a few line breaks so it looks good. And we will write button. Inside that, let's give the button an ID first, which is unique to itself. So we will give it an ID get total. And now when the button is clicked, what should happen? We need to write the statements for that. So we will write on click, and then inside of this, we will write what statements should be processed when the button is clicked. So what we will do is whenever the button is clicked, the function has to be called that we had created above over here. This function that you see, this function has to be called whenever the button is clicked. And for that, what we'll do is we'll create a variable called total. So whenever the function is called, the value that is returned is saved in this variable called tot, that is total. So let's call the function. The function name was total with interest, and let's pass all the inputs that were there. So that was original amount, comma, the number of years, comma, the annual interest rate, comma, the number per year, right? So so now we have created the button also, where we have written what has to be done when the button is clicked. Okay, and you can just give a placeholder for this. You can write calculate total amount. All right, now the button, so far we have declared the variables, we have declared the function, we have made the text boxes where the user can write the input, and also created a button which when clicked will call the function. Now the last thing that we have to do is display the output. So let's display the output. We create a p tag and write your total amount of money after the deposit period is, and then let's create an input text box where this would be, the output would be displayed. Let's give this text box a unique ID and call it total money. We have the input type, which is the text and the ID. And there is one thing that we should mention, which is read only. Okay, so what does this read only do? And basically the read only property sets or returns whether a text field is read only or not. And basically this read only field cannot be modified. However, a user can tap to it, highlight it, and copy the text from it. So that is why we have written the read only property, because that cannot be touched and it can only be read. There cannot be any modification. Okay, so let's just save it and go to our program. Okay, so let's just give it some random values. Calculate total amount. I clicked on the button, but I cannot see any output here. There is surely something that we missed. And like pause the video and think about what is it that we have missed and why we are not getting the output. Take some time to understand there is something wrong that we have done on the onChange function for the button. So I'll tell you what it is. Once we have called the function over here and given it to the variable tot, okay, we want to display this to in this text box, right? So what happened is we did not tell this variable to be displayed in this text box. We missed out on one code, which is we need to write that this ID dot value should be getting this value. That is only when the input text box will understand, okay, so the value that has to be displayed has to be taken from here. And that is why we cannot see any output. So let's write that. Let's say total money dot value equal to, let's give it a dollar sign, this plus the tot dot, let's just give a 2 fix, that means you will the number of digits that has to be displayed after the decimal point should be 2. So we have done that. So now what will happen is, now the code is understood. Okay, so this input text box has an ID dot money, and this dot money dot value should be taken from here. Now if we go and run our program, we can see our input. So let me write some random values, and over here we can see that we can have the output over here. Now understand, the read only thing that we have written over here, if you click on it, you won't be able to make any changes to it. You can only highlight it or copy it. Now, just in case I remove the read only, save it, then let's run the program again and calculate the total amount. Now you can see that we can click on it and I can make changes to it. So that is why we have written the read only term, so that whenever we get the output, it cannot be changed. So that is how we can also make the program appealing, by not only just writing the functions, but taking the inputs from the user and using the dot value concept to make a form and then accordingly show the outputs. Now let's move on to the next one. The next problem statement is to find the volume of a Great Pyramid of Giza. So the problem is easy. Again, we just have to know the formula and then we can write the function for it. So if you want, you can use the cube template, cube program as a template also, but I would say it's just coded from scratch. You will be able to understand it properly. You can take the inputs from the user using the prompt function, and the most important of all, the formula to find the volume would be area of the base into height divided by 3. So just pause the video here, go back, write this code out. It's easy. Just make a basic HTML template. Then under the script tab, you will have script tag, you will have the function declaration, you will take the prompts from the user, and then finally call the function and give the output using document.write. So try doing that, then come back to the video and see if your code is right or not. So now we will write the code. We will say doc type HTML, write the HTML tag, have the head tag. Let's mention the title, volume of a pyramid. Okay, then we can have the body tag, and inside the body tag, the script tag. And in the script tag, we are going to write our function. So we write the keyword function and give it some name. I'll just give it volume pyramid. And we need to give 2 parameters over here, which is the base area and the height. So I will write the area, comma, height. Now we will write our function statements under it, which will be return the area into height divided by 3. Perfect. And let's take the prompts from the user. So we have to take the base, which is the base of the pyramid. So we can write enter the area of the pyramid's base. All right, and put a semicolon. And the next variable is height. So we can write variable height and take the prompt and say enter the height of the pyramid and a semicolon. And the last thing that we have to do is call the function and display the output. So we will write document.write the volume is, and then call the function, which is volume pyramid, and pass the parameters base and height and a semicolon. Let's save this and let's run it. And it says enter the area of the base pyramid, enter the height, and we have seen we got the output over here. The spelling of volume is incorrect, but yeah, it can be fixed. Yeah, perfect. So this is how easy it is to work with JavaScript functions. And just remember that whenever you create the program, you first write the basic HTML template. Then under the script tag, you declare the function, take the input from the user using prompts, and then remember to always call the function and display it by using document.write. So with this, we come to an end of the recitation, and we have done 3 programs successfully. It's time to test your knowledge and also make sure that you're marked present for the recitation. So please go on this link and remember to fill out the form. Thank you, and I will meet you in the next recitation.